Welcome to Buckets, brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, and this is your Monday Best Bets episode and our futures look in the National Basketball Association for January 29th. Thanks for being with us. Glad to have you with us. Make sure that if you're listening to this, you're also downloading the Action Network app. You can find all sorts of cool stuff on there. You're going to have lots of Super Bowl content. Lots of Super Bowl content about the MVP of the league. No, he's not in it. No, that's not what's good. But, you know, those Bills, who everyone had futures on, they're no, they're not in there either. You could not live with your own failure. Where did it lead you? Back to Mahomes. You can find all sorts of great Super Bowl content there. College basketball season. Look, football's good. No football next weekend. It's that time. Start getting ready for college basketball. You can do that with the Action Network app. Start tracking picks, finding our experts' analysis, breakdowns, best bets, all that stuff, as well as, hey, great time to start betting the NBA. So we got all that stuff for you in the app, as well as on youtube.com/the Action Network. You can catch all sorts of great stuff on there. We're going to be doing more live shows for the NBA now that football is wrapping up. So make sure to keep it tuned to youtube.com/the Action Network. On today's show, I'm joined, as I am every Monday, by the Future Jays. I got Jim Turvey. He's on Twitter and in the Action Network app at TurveyBets. And Joe Delera, master of the elevator escalator. You can find him on Twitter and in the Action Network app at Joe Delera. Thanks for joining me, guys. All right, we're going to start off as we do all the time here on the Monday show with our best bets. And then today we're going to talk about the New York Knicks, the injury of Julius Randle, how to bet Knicks futures with how they played lately. They've been so impressive, but they are without, all of their front court. We'll talk about them. Plus, we will talk about Joel Embiid's decision. The training staff's decision, forgive me, for Joel Embiid not to play in Denver. Only 7 games left before he is ineligible for the MVP. We'll talk about how to bet that market as well. But let's get started with best bets. This slate is tasty. We got 12 games. We got enough games to make good decisions. Lines are really good. We're on some of the same crossover spots. Let's go ahead and go around the table and we'll give our best bets. Joe Delera, let's start with you. What are your best bets for Monday in the association?
All right, I like Denver -4 against the Milwaukee Bucks. I like OG Anunoby over 18.5 points. And I like Jarrett Allen over 10.5 rebounds against the Los Angeles Clippers.
All right, Jim Turvey, your best bets for Monday.
Yeah, this is basically the inverse of last week where we all hated the slate. I think we all absolutely adore the slate tomorrow. So I've got a bunch. I got Utah Jazz money line. I got Spurs -3.5. Got Thunder -2.5, and I have the Nuggets first quarter.
All right. I've got the Denver Nuggets -4, so I'm with Joe. I've got the Oklahoma City Thunder -2, so I'm with Jim. I've also got the under 232.5 in Pels Celtics, and I've got the over 232.5 in Utah Brooklyn. So we got a lot of places we can start. Let's start with Denver since all three of us are on that game. Jim, why don't you go first? Give me the first quarter look for why you like the Nuggets matching up with the Bucks. Giannis Antetokounmpo they first popped the injury report and it was clean, and then he was listed as questionable with an illness. So maybe he also is going to duck Nikola Jokic in Denver. But I doubt it. Personally, I think he probably plays. He's also listed as probable on the report. Why do you like the Nuggets minus whatever the line is? Probably 1, I would guess, for this in the money on the spread with the Nuggets in the first quarter.
Yeah, I would guess it would be 1, maybe 1.5. I don't see it getting past 2. I'm going to like any number they post for it, basically. They hit the Nuggets first quarter home against the spread has been a wagon for a while now. This year is just a continuation of a trend that they've seen for, their home court in general is great. And Jokic gets a lot of minutes in the first quarter. Combine those two, they've been absolutely amazing in the first quarter against the spread for a long time. They're 16-6 ATS. In the first quarter this season. This is a Bucks team that struggles in the first quarter. They're 18-26-2 against spread in the first quarter. But overall, I was leaning towards the Nuggets for the full game as well, in part because of this debut of Doc Rivers coaching. I think a way to target that even more, the first quarter with the new coach is the most inexperienced the team will get. They can kind of grow into it over time, over games, maybe even over quarters if they pick it up quick. The very start of Doc's career is going to be this first quarter. We'll see how they, if they come out scheming already. But Denver at home, regardless, is a really good team in that first quarter. So I think just hyper targeting that first quarter market is where I'm going to be for this game specifically.
So this is what's interesting, and this is why I love the workshop, is I have what I feel is a strong cap on this game. I feel very confident in this pick. I think it's absolutely the right side. Joe, I'm gonna give you the floor to give the cap, but there are certain elements of this that I think that I'm going to push back on, even as I take the same side. But go ahead and give me your cap for the full game. Nuggets -4.
Yeah, so I'm going to echo a lot of what Jim said about Doc Rivers, his first game coaching the team. Obviously, he's been watching the team, consulting the team, being an advisor to the team throughout the course of the season. So I know that there's obviously some familiarity, but I do think that having him on the sideline changes the dynamics like a little bit. The other thing is honestly like Denver, after that like really gross win over the Sixers, who didn't play anybody, who were led by B-Ball Paul. I think that Denver, might want to lock in and try to win this game against another, title contender, and really kind of push and defend home court before going out on the road against OKC for a game. Additionally, over the course of the season, Denver's been pretty solid at home, whereas Milwaukee, they have a positive net rating on the road, but it drops pretty precipitously. It's not nearly as good at only plus 1.2. So I think that Denver's been better overall. On dunks and threes, Denver is plus 4.9 in terms of adjusted net, whereas Milwaukee is plus 2.9 in adjusted net. And I think that I don't think it's necessarily likely that Giannis sits. He's not, I don't think that he's trying to duck anybody, for example, but I do think that, given the fact that he is on the injury report, the injury reports have been a little bit tough to depend on lately. But I do think that given the fact that he is on the injury report, there is that like slight added chance that maybe he doesn't play. And then like this line really does skyrocket the other direction. So I like Denver -4, and I'll lay those points at home.
So I like a lot of what you said there about their road performance and things like that. I'll push back on the Doc point. Doc's not going to change anything.
Yeah.
Like they're going to run the same defensive scheme that they've always run. And they're not necessarily going to, I don't think he's going to install a new playbook. So I don't think that you're going to see like, they don't have, Doc doesn't have time to install anything here. So they just got to go back to base plays that they know and are familiar with. Now, the good news is like, guess what? Everybody in the NBA runs the same shit. So it's totally fine. And even if you're throwing out some of what Griff did, and also like, why would you do that? The offense was great. You just need to fix the defense. The defense is basically, let's get out of some of the nonsense that we've been running and let's get back into more simplistic stuff. And a lot of that is like the same stuff that they got them in trouble with Bud will be a problem here, where it's like, look, they want to play drop. They want a title play and drop. And they are the best drop team in the league when they are executing well, which they've not at all year. I get that, but it will be very simple for Doc to just simplify things, which is like, hey, we're going to drop everything here. We'll blitz on these specific sequences. We will drop in kind of pick and roll coverage versus the Nuggets, et cetera. And like, they'll just want to get into those very basic rhythms. He's not going to like come in and do a complicated game plan for this first game. This is a bad matchup for Milwaukee. They've struggled with Denver historically. And then you throw on top of it that this is a home game. Now, look, power rating, if I give the Nuggets a standard home court advantage, I have this as Nuggets -1. The Bucks have been a better team on the aggregate of the season than the Nuggets, even with the struggles of Adrian Griffin and the defense being so bad. That's how good the offense has been. That said, when the Bucks are on the road, they are worse, especially with the bench. And guess what? The Nuggets bench is night and day. Reggie Jackson's a +14 in net rating at home. He's like a -13 on the road. It is stark guy to guy to guy. Their bench plays well at home with the crowd behind them. They will run. They will exhaust the team in altitude. Even if Giannis plays, he's sick. Not great for a guy that's got to motor up and down the court in altitude. This is a low line versus that. I've got this because Denver's home court is so good. I do have it at 6. So 2 points of value. I'll go ahead and lay it with the Nuggets. I agree with most of the points, but I do think that the Doc stuff is more, it might be weird, but the best thing Doc's going to do is just be like, no more fucking around. Let's just do what you guys know how to do. And I think that will help them. I just don't think it will help them in this particular spot, Jim.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But to the point of if things do stay the same, these Bucks have gotten off to slow starts in first quarters all season. They're 5-15 on the road against the spread in the first quarter. So that has been an issue. So unless you think he's going to solve it, which I think would be a very quick solve, you have one of the best starting teams at home in the first quarter and one of the worst starting teams on the road in the first quarter. So if things stay the same, that works for me as well.
All right, let's jump on over to Thunder. Thunder here are on a 5-7. We did the breakdowns of the numbers with Joe asked me to pull these. The Thunder are small favorites, but they are a home favorite. Home favorites that are 5-7. Going back to 2003, 286 and 301 and 5 at 49%. So slightly below 50%. That's not within the range of it being super profitable to fade them. I think this number is light. I think OKC, especially off of that loss to the Pistons, will respond with a good effort. That was if I wasn't distracted by certain events, I probably would have circled in that game as like, oh, this is a great look ahead spot. Like the Thunder are looking ahead for the Wolves game. The Wolves have not been the same team over the last 2 months that they were to start the season. That's pretty normal. They're still very good. They're just not the same team. The Thunder have been remarkably consistent. They're coming off of a loss. I trust Mark Daigneault off of what is not an that's not a bad road trip or flight at all. Detroit to OKC. Well, maybe they got hung up or something, but in general, I don't think that the travel here is going to hit them necessarily as hard. I like the matchup with how they're able to space the floor versus the Wolves that want to compact that paint. I like their 3-point edge versus a Wolves offense that continues to struggle a lot in terms of their offensive floor. So Jim, I like this play quite a bit. I'm willing to lay it with a team that's on 5-7. I laid it with 2.5. There's a Thunder -2 in the market as well.
Yeah, I echo a lot of what you just said. I also think a huge factor in this is the Timberwolves without Mike Conley have looked very, very, very human. He did not make my list of players, the Jalen Johnson All-Stars. He is a late addition. He is an injury replacement to be in there because he is absolutely a player that when he is missing, I'm going to be looking to fade the Wolves. So he's questionable right now. But even if he does play, I'm going to like this. You said it's a light number. I agree. Even with this being a 5-7 for the Thunder, I would a Thunder team on its 5th game in 7 nights over a Timberwolves team with 1 day of rest. I'm saying the Thunder are a better team at this point, and they have a solid home court. I really like the matchup as well. Gobert is not as useful in a game against the Thunder when he's getting spread out potentially by some of OKC's bigs. Since the calendar turned over, the Wolves are just 8-7. They really, you mentioned the last 2 months, but even more specifically, the defense just hasn't been that as overpoweringly dominant, and the offense has really notably slipped. If you watch the games recently, Anthony Edwards, he was sick, in a couple of games, so maybe it's potentially that. But some of those really tough jumpers, especially those bankers he was getting early in the season, those haven't been hitting at quite as high a rate. It makes me think that maybe some of that was a little bit of shooting luck, and his numbers are going to come back down a little bit. I still like this Wolves team. I think they're a strong team. If Conley plays, I'd have this around OKC -4, so not a monster edge. But if he's out, I'm basically going to take almost a whatever number with Conley being out, because he's so essential to keeping their offense from stalling out and just turning into fade those little like turnaround jumpers and Cat trying to either overpower dudes and turning the ball over or sitting on the perimeter. So definitely keep an eye out for Conley, but I don't hate grabbing the number here regardless. And then if the Conley news comes out, you can add even a little bit more later.
Let's jump over to Wizards Spurs. So you're wanting to lay the 3.5 with San Antonio. Why do you like that spot?
Spurs are a team that I'm really looking at lately. So with the Wemby at center and the Wemby in more minutes, that's just 2 for 2 good news right there. We've seen the last couple games, they have a nice win. They've got some tight losses, covered some spreads. Wembanyama is amazing. I'm not breaking news here. He is so good. And it's not just the surface level stats, the impact stats are there too. Well, I was looking this up on NBA.com. This guy broke my brain. I had to check it with people. Am I reading this right? Their best 5-man lineup. So, and I'm not saying best by numbers. I'm saying if you take their 5 best players, if you take the lineup that if most of us were coaching the team, we'd put out there, you can argue about the 5th person on this. But Trey Jones, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Victor Wembanyama, still tricky to say, Jeremy Sohan. That has a plus 32.8 net rating in 60 minutes. And that was the lineup that closed out against the Wolves the other night and looked really good. That's an amazing, like if Pop wants to press that button more, he's going to be able to press that button more. So against a Wizards team that lost this exact matchup at home a little over a week ago and really doesn't have any of these kind of hidden buttons that they can just hit over time because they're just not as good a roster, I think this number should be a lot bigger.
Is this the first game with the new coach? Who even got announced? I truthfully do not know. Who's coaching the Wizards?
That's a good question. Does
Oh.
it matter?
One of the three of us should know that.
This is a good sign for the NBA expert show. Let me tell you.
Google. I'm literally Googling it right now, and it still says Wes Unseld Jr.
Oh,
So,
it's Brian Keefe. He's good. Brian Keefe's good.
Okay.
And they're 1-0
hey,
because they
They did win their most recent game against Detroit.
They beat the Pistons. So, but the good news here is you're no longer getting the fire coach bump, so you're avoiding that. So that's good.
There you go.
My model has performed terribly with Spurs at home. It's just been off them, whatever. So they're one of the teams I've kind of marked out here. Additionally, my model tends to be like the Wizards aren't that bad. I've talked about this before. My model is very much like the Wizards aren't that bad, and then the Wizards play, and I'm like, they're so bad. And the model's like, they're not that bad, and so I'm caught in this loop with them. I'm gonna stay away from this one. I get the spot in particular. This is a pretty good matchup with Gafford versus Wembanyama for the remainder of however long Gafford is there. I think he gets traded before the deadline. 50-50. I'll say he gets traded before the deadline. So yeah, I think that I can't blame you for taking the spot. I just I don't feel like I can trust either team here, and San Antonio's been weird at home for me, so I'm going to go ahead and stay away based off of the model, but I appreciate the play. Let's go to Joe. And let's go to OG Anunoby over 18.5 because I got some thoughts on this Knicks game. Hit me.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really interesting with Randall, right? Like, it looks like Randall's gonna miss at least the next like couple of weeks, if not a month. Like, we'll see. I mean, Steph Curry, when he had a similar injury last year, partially dislocated. I don't know how you partially dislocate, but whatever. But I'm not a doctor. Partially dislocated shoulder. He missed 11 games, 3 weeks. Without Randall, the Knicks are going to be dying for some usage here. Randall was second in the team in usage, almost the same, honestly, as Brunson. And without RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, there's like nobody even close. Like, there's nobody else in the 20s in terms of 20% usage rate. OG Anunoby's at 14% right now. And I think that's even with him kind of leading the second unit. It looks like that's the way that Tibbs has kind of decided to use him to try to give him that offensive role that he wanted. I think this is a pretty good opportunity for him to kind of seize the moment and for Tibbs to say, like, look, man, like we need somebody to score. I don't think that he's necessarily the best scorer, but we did see him, perform pretty well. We've seen him perform pretty well so far with the Knicks, but we also saw him perform pretty well with his time at the Raptors if like Siakam was out, if Barnes was out, if they were missing some other guys. So I do think that there's some room for him to grow here. He's been hitting his points prop. It's been about 13.5, 14.5. I think that given the void that Randall, is like giving up essentially, that this is pretty significant. And there's a good opportunity for him to kind of excel. In the last 5 games alone, he's exceeded the 18.5 in 3 of 5, a couple games at 19, a game at 26 against Denver. I do think that this is a good opportunity for him, and he should see a pretty significant usage bump. So I like him to go over the 18.5. I think it's just a touch low given the fact that there's so much volume that needs to be taken. And without Barrett, like McBride is fine, but like he doesn't fit the same role. And Josh Hart like isn't really capable of creating his own shot in the same way that I think OG Anunoby is, even though OG like is a little stiff sometimes, like when he's got the ball in his hand and he's not just being used as a cutter.
Yeah. The line on this is interesting. So I have it's 5. I have it 9 with everybody healthy. If you take out, like adjusting for Mitchell, if you take out Julius Randle, I have him based off of estimated wins this season at dunks and threes. I have him at a spread value of 3.8. Take the combined contributions of the guys that'll play behind him in his stead, and it's like a point. So let's put it at 2.8. So that gets me only to 7.8 here versus, or I'm sorry, if I go the other way, this does move me to like 6.2 is where I get it at. I am not going to do it because I do not want to bet on the Charlotte fucking Hornets. However, I have a trend for the spread bettors in this game. The Knicks just played the Heat. Teams after playing the Miami Heat this season, 13-32 straight up, friends. Teams after playing Miami have won 29% of their games. Against the spread, 16-29 for 36%.
Yeah,
playing Miami makes you miserable.
I would say that's an interesting spread, like trend too, because the Knicks are undefeated against teams below 500 on the season, straight up. So it's definitely like, and I think it's 19-0 or 20-0 right now. So there's a lot of competing trends on this game. Like I could see maybe wanting to grab them against the spread. I think LaMelo is on the report. And the line has actually moved since in like the 10 minutes that we've been recording. The line moved from like 5 to, I think there's already some 7s popping in the market within.
Son of a bitch! I'm gonna bet the Hornets.
It's moved like fast, because I was thinking about it and I was like, I don't know. I want to know about LaMelo, especially given the fact they played Miami. So, but it's definitely an interesting spot, and I can see that the Hornets are buzzing in your ear right now.
I will say right now that 8 will be a buy. 8 will be a buy spot on the Hornets. God help me. The Utah Jazz taking on the Brooklyn Nets. Jim, you like the money line. I don't have a whole lot of. I don't think this one takes a genius to crack this code of why you're betting against the Nets, given that they've completely imploded. Utah was really bad on the road, but they've been much better lately. Why do you like the Jazz on the money line?
Well, you read the script over here, so I'll lead, as you mentioned, Brooklyn. That's half the cap here. They're 15-17 in the last, 5-17. There's not a 1 in front of that. 5-17 in the last 6 weeks, including losses straight up in 5 of their last 7 home games. So they're not even really protecting home court. On the flip side of that, Utah, since Colin Sexton entered the starting lineup December 13th. They're 8-1 against teams with losing records. 6 of those wins coming on the road. So they're really taking care of business against the bottom of the league right now. And the Nets at this point are in that bottom of the league tier, even if we all think that they're maybe a touch better than that. They're certainly not performing like it right now. Since Sexton entered the starting lineup in general, they're actually 17-7 and 8-6 on the road. So that lineup change, along with Markkanen coming back from injury. This Jazz team is not, like, if you look at adjusted net rating for the full season, these teams are right next to each other. So that, kind of would actually make sense to have Nets maybe -2.5. I have it Jazz -2.5. And it is a lot on recent performance that is lost in a season long number when you look at that.
Yeah. I've downgraded them significantly. I do love the over here in this spot. I've got it projected. Let's see. Get to do this because the editor said I can take my time to look up a number. I've got this projected up at 242.5, and I look. This is 2 teams a bomb from 3, and I don't know. Lauri Markkanen has some sort of camouflage lately, where teams are just like not guarding him. It's just like not, and he's absolutely a flamethrower. So volume 3s. I think this will be a pretty up tempo 3-point volume contest. I like the over at any number that you'll find it in the market. Last one, Jared Allen, over 10.5 rebounds as the Cleveland Cavaliers take on those red hot Los Angeles Clippers.
Yeah, I mean, Clippers have been incredible, and they've been doing it now without Ivica Zubac. I think I pronounced it right. I'm trying. I keep trying to improve on that one. So they're stuck with Mason Plumlee, and that's not really ideal for them, especially against a guy like Jared Allen, who's such an elite rebounder. And when we look at Jared Allen, what he's been able to do, especially without Evan Mobley, and especially recently, he's really, really improved his play. Over his last 14 games, he's exceeded this line. So 14 straight games, he's got 11 or more rebounds. Over that 14-game stretch, he's averaging 14.1 rebounds on an incredible 21.4 potentials. The 10.5, I think, is just too low. He's not like an exciting guy to bet on. The Cavs are not like the most exciting market even right now to be betting on. But it's been a play, it's been an angle. He's really been getting his usage up. He gets a lot of offensive boards, he gets the defensive boards, he gets the tip-ins. He's going to be on the floor because of his defense. He's not somebody that's going to be worked off of the floor. And especially without Mobley, I think that role is a little bit more secure. You're not seeing them, if they have to go to a one big type of lineup. So I do like Allen in this spot. He should be by far the most dominant rebounding presence on the floor. And I like him to go over the 10.5. It's a number he just continues to hit with regularity over the last 14 games. Okay,
so there's a healthy slate of games for you to pick from. Our best bets. Jim Turvey, Utah money line. Spurs -3.5 versus the Wizards. Thunder -2.5 versus the Wolves. Denver first quarter versus the Bucks. I've got Denver -4 in the full game, along with Joe. Joe also has that. Joe has OG Anunoby over 18.5 points. Jared Allen over 10.5 rebounds. I've got over 232.5 Utah Brooklyn. OKC -2, Denver -4.5. One more I will throw in there. I will probably wind up betting the Lakers, just because I don't think that where I have this number accounts for how bad the Rockets have fallen off without the various injuries to them. They have been the same since Tari Eason got hurt. They just have not been the same. I talked all year about, hey, there are these mirror teams that kind of get to December and then they realize like, oh, we're not very good. Say hello to your 2023-24 mirror team, the Houston Rockets, who looked like they might be a playoff team and are not going to be a playoff team. But hey, they're going to go over their win total, so good for them. Let's talk Knicks. I can't believe I'm going to indulge in this Knicksness with Knicks fans, but let's do it. Julius Randle gets hurt, shoulder injury. Still, do we have a projected timeline for his absence, Joe?
They didn't say anything yet. The most recent report that Woj said was still last night, and they said the initial X-ray didn't show anything like super significant. It looked like normal in terms of what they would expect for a dislocated arm or dislocated shoulder. They said that he got an MRI last night, or so 2 nights ago, like immediately after the game on Saturday night. To me, the fact that I haven't heard anything at the time that we're recording this at 10:30 Eastern time on Sunday makes me incredibly nervous, because I feel like if it was good, we probably would have heard about something right now. And the fact that I haven't heard anything makes me think that maybe he's going to another doctor. Like, I don't really know. I'm very nervous to see what that report comes out as. I think that the Knicks can kind of hang for a bit, but I think the way that the East is kind of stepping up and a lot of teams have kind of improved, I definitely wouldn't want to see them drop into the play, and that's not a situation that you really want to be in if you're in the Eastern Conference.
This is from Jeff Stotts, In Street Clothes, who I absolutely trust on all things injuries. Julius Randle. The primary concern after a shoulder dislocation is the associated soft tissue damage, like the labrum, which ended John Moran's season, which will ultimately dictate treatment options. Average time lost for in-season nondescript shoulder dislocations is 31 days, 11.7 games. Obviously, if he tore the labrum, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Jim. Julius Randle's really good. Like, the fact that he's made All NBA several times, people just like gloss over that. And I'm like, it's hard to make All NBA guys. Like, that's hard to do. That's like, All NBA is treated with a lot of respect by the voters. It's hard to get there. And he's a multiple time All NBA guy. I've liked Julius since he was a prospect. I used to call him T-Rex arms because he's got these little tiny arms attached to this huge monster body. I like Julius a lot. And I think that in the right place, he can be really effective. By the way, every indication I've gotten from talking to people around the read is like, he's a really good guy to have around now. Like, he's like a good veteran to have in the locker room. Am I wrong to think that if they could get Mitchell back, or they could trade for a big, this might open up maybe some hyper optimization of Brunson, OG, and just like, we're just going to run spread pick and roll with a lot of 3-point range? Like, there have been games where Julius has had monster performances and they've lost in part because like, they don't have as much of a math advantage. I really like them running basically, hey, Jalen Brunson's going to be head of the snake, and then we're going to shoot a ton of threes and offensive rebound. That to me is a model I believe in. I have to downgrade them if Julius is out a long time. There are ways that this could be okay for them, despite Julius being a really good player. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think regardless, this is going to be a really interesting test for the Knicks, because they have hit a point where they're in a great groove. And I do think that from a zoomed out, like, let's ignore this immediate injury and assume that it's closer, that he will return by the end of the season. I do think that this Knicks team actually is interesting, but I think we'll gather a lot of information in the next few weeks while he's out. We'll be able to see if they're able to maintain this without, their highest usage or second highest usage player in Randle. And I think the really easy kind of like NBA hipster take is to kind of crap on Randle. I know Knicks fans constantly are crapping on Randle, but to a degree that happens because when he when his effort fades, it's so obvious how important he is to this Knicks team, because when that effort isn't there or when he's missing shots, they suddenly look pretty bad. So I'm pretty curious to see if this Knicks team is able to handle this injury. I think you have a very Pollyannish view potentially of how it could play out. I'm a little bit more skeptical, which is why, even though I do see the Knicks as a team that, if they are fully healthy, if they get Mitchell back, if they get Randall back, and they are a fully healthy team going into the postseason, I think it's going to be a team that I'm going to have to, either be betting series to series or maybe even look at a potential to win the conference bet, because they match up well with a lot of teams. They match up decently with Boston. They've played Boston pretty well in the past. Having OG and Anunoby to throw on Tatum or Giannis, or heck, even Embiid at this point, what he's shown he's been able to do. This Knicks team is very interesting to me, but there is absolutely no need to bet any of it right now, because you're about to potentially see them struggle without Randall. But even if they aren't, they're with Milwaukee, Philly, and Boston at the top of the conference, there's no way we enter the postseason with them shorter than 10-1, in my opinion. So why not gather information, see if Mitchell Robinson's coming back, see how long Randall's injury is, see how they play without Randall, and still get basically the same number in 3 months.
Yeah. Plus, you get to see where they line up in the bracket, which is clutch.
So I want to get there.
Exactly.
We'll get there, because that's like a really important thing I want to talk about. But Joe, I want to get your thoughts on, like, is this like they're screwed without Randall because now everyone's going to load up on Jalen Brunson and they don't have a second guy? Like, what are your thoughts on, like, what the Knicks are going to look like here without Randall for a little bit?
I think the biggest thing is going to be like having, which is, I think is going to be tough, because Tibbs like always likes to run his guys so much. I do think that it's been important that Miles McBride played really well when he had to fill in for a couple games, like running point. So I think that that's important, just so that maybe you don't have to run Brunson 40 minutes a game. I do think that we've seen Brunson be able to lead a team without other tools. Like when we saw what we saw him do with the Mavericks when Luka was out. We've seen him do it now with the Knicks when Julius Randle's been out. I think that he's so good, and what he can do in terms of facilitating and getting his own shot, and taking spot up shots when they're available to him. I think that he's so good that it's going to elevate the team. And additionally, it's like he's a guy. I think it'd be one thing. It's like when you see it the other way around, like when Brunson's out and Randall's the only guy. It's a little bit different. It doesn't feel right, and I think that's because Randall is not like. He's not a point forward. Like it's not in his nature to run the offense. For Brunson, it's like, yeah, like you lost another one of your best players. Maybe you lost like one of your favorite guys to pass to, or a guy that you trust to act to finish on plays, or maybe create his own shot to give you a little bit of a break. But Brunson is a point guard. He can facilitate this offense. He can run this offense, and I think maximize and optimize the rest of the roster. I do think that it helps, like the Nova Knicks type of thing. I do think it helps that, he's played with a lot of these guys for many years. So like there is a little bit of continuity there. It's just in that familiarity. I'm not going to bury the Knicks. Obviously, I do think that obviously if Randall's out for the playoffs, that's a major, major problem. And, maybe that's something that really forces the Knicks' hand in terms of maybe saying like, hey, like, let's go and try to make a trade. Let's try to do something now. We feel good about this season. But even then, I think that there's plenty of opportunity for Brunson to help optimize the roster, see what exactly OG Anunoby can do in a bigger offensive role, and just see where maybe they need to fill in a guy. Like, do you need a 3-and-D guy? Do you need like another scorer? Like, can OG be that, or do you need another guy that can really elevate his game to do so? I think that it's an opportunity for New York, and like if you were gonna have an injury of this magnitude where a guy's going to be out for probably at least a month, would you not want it to be when the All-Star break's coming in February?
Yeah. The seeding thing is really important, because one of the reasons that I've kind of hit like a roadblock is I was like, I don't see the Knicks finishing worse than 5th before the Randall injury. I was like, I don't see them finishing worse than 5th. And I don't think that the Celtics give up the 1 seed. And the one team I don't like the Knicks versus is the Celtics, because they can switch everything and they'll play them a little bit differently. And I think that'll be and they can match them with firepower, and you got Porzingis, and like, I just don't like that matchup as much for them. But it's like, hey, if they fall to 6, I actually think that's great. They'll face either Milwaukee or Philadelphia. Both teams run drop scheme. That's perfect. Jalen will tear that shit up. Like, those are series I want to bet the Knicks in, and they could have a real chance of going through both those teams and actually making conference finals. But to Jim's point, if I'm right and the Knicks do fall to 6, which gives them more value, the number will also get worse because they fell to 6 and they're no longer the 4th best team in the Eastern Conference or 5th or in that range. So yeah, wait on the injury, see where they're at, and then I will say, like, if we get late in the season, and we'll be on talking about this, if we're late in the season, if it's the end of March and I'm like, oh, the Knicks are definitely going to be the 6, there's no chance that they're 4 or 5. They're going to be 6. I will probably start looking at Knicks futures at that point. That's where I'm going to want them, because I do love that matchup. And I love it not just for one series, because if it's one series, you can just bet the series. We'll talk about the rollover value versus betting them long term and what it would be like to have a Knicks ticket in a conference finals appearance. All right, last thing before we go. I was at the game on Saturday. Got up, spent time with my kids, had some cereal, got a cup of coffee, just chores around the house for the wife, and then off I go. My whole Saturday's gone, but it's all right. You know why? Because I'm going to get the MVP showdown. I'm going to get to see Joel Embiid finally play a game in Denver. Not on the injury report. Should be a great time. The arena is electric. There's so much energy in there. There's so much excitement. It's going to be great. Oh, Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris aren't playing. Well, that sucks. Okay, now it's. But you know what? We're still going to get Embiid. It's tough for him, but he's going to have like a very justifiable excuse if they lose in a very tough environment. And then 5 minutes before tip, Adrian Wojnarowski reports that Joel Embiid is out. Okay, I have not gotten to talk about this. I have a column up that you can read on the Action Network. The number one thing I actually want to say here is the Sixers throwing their training staff under the bus here is bullshit, because anyone that covers this league knows that if Joel Embiid did not have a tear, which he does not, if he does not have a tear, Joel Embiid can be like, no, I'm playing. I hear you. I appreciate your concern. I'm playing in this basketball game. That's not me saying that. Players have said that. Like, you can do the work, okay? If Joel Embiid wanted to play in that game, he could. Now, I'm not disputing he got hurt. He got banged up versus the Pacers. Fine. But the minute that happened, if it was that bad, if the swelling was that bad, why is he not on the injury report? Did the Philadelphia 76ers, who list him as questionable every goddamn game of the year, just forget to check? Team official tells Ramona Shelburne of ESPN, Ramona's got a great working relationship with his representatives at CAA. Tells Ramona Shelburne it's going to happen. He's not going to be on the injury report. And then he doesn't play. Hasn't played there since 2019. The goddamn pandemic happened since then. It's fine. It's fine. I wrote a column, though. You can read it. And my question is genuinely, what are voters going to do with a guy that openly mocked everybody? ABC game, everyone's excited, flew out ESPN, lots of folks there, lots of excitement, big primetime spot, league's trying to say the Stars are going to play. And he mocked it. Came out doesn't come out until fourth quarter, comes out in the fourth quarter and like riles up the crowd. Look, it's fine. And again, I'll tell you, if you want, like, can you give Joel Embiid some credit? He whipped Joker's ass in Philadelphia. He wound up a 0 and Jokic wound up a +1, but he outplayed him in terms of the game stats, and he dominated. One of the best games of the season was a bet stream that I did with Minnesota versus Philadelphia. He was the best player on that court by a mile. He dominated on both ends. Joel has been amazing at home. He has 3 road games versus teams over 500 this season. 1 in the season opener versus the Bucks, 1 versus the Oklahoma City Thunder and Chet Holmgren, who's 208 fucking pounds, and 1 versus the Indiana Pacers the other night. They lost. I think the way that you conduct yourself matters. I think the respect that you have for the game matters, and I don't think that there's been an adequate amount. Now, that doesn't mean he's not MVP, because when he's been on the floor, when he's played, mostly versus the Wizards and Victor Wembanyama, he's been amazing. Jim, I'll ask you this. He's got 7 games left. He's got 11 games missed, depending. He's questionable for the game in Portland on Monday, which would be very interesting to see if he plays. We're getting real, like, it's tight. He's definitely on pace to go way, way over. I'm making the argument in a column I'm writing. You can't really predict what's going to happen. You don't know what he wants to do. You don't know if he wants to hit 65 exactly. You don't know if he wants to miss way more, but have the stats where it's like he would have won. If not, I don't think you can factor that in when you're making these bets. It almost freezes the market in a way where I don't know that you can adequately really kind of get your brain around how to bet this from any sort of angle, because I don't think you can anticipate what the team, Joel, or anyone associated is going to do the rest of the way out with the 7 remaining games.
So I'll lead with this, a caveat, a grain of salt that's the size of a large boulder that's the size of a small boulder, or whatever that tweet was. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills on a daily basis with this, because I really don't feel like I can get a read on this. After he ducked that game, which as an Embiid supporter was mortifying, it truly was. His number basically didn't move in the MVP race. So my take all season has been, I truly think Joel Embiid, he talked early in his career about how he looked at the greats and he studied the history. And I think he is a very smart, very big picture player who knew that he needed an MVP on his mantle to go down as one of the true greats. And I think he sold himself too thin for multiple seasons, but he got it. And this season, everything you hear from him, even after the 70-point game, his first comments were, it doesn't matter at all. Like he truly is on to the bigger picture in my mind. This is how, but again, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. I can't read this situation all. I feel like he is truly putting the emphasis on the postseason this year, which is why at the beginning of the season, I said, I don't want him for MVP, because I think he is going to be fine resting during the regular season and making sure he is healthy for the postseason. If he is not, it will be one of the biggest losses I've had, because I have defended him for going for the MVP in seasons past and then it burning him in the postseason. He has the MVP now. If he sells out to get it again and he lands right on 65 and he plays through a couple of nagging injuries late in the season, I'm done with him. But I do think that he truly has the bigger picture right now, and that he has his MVP now.
Jim, he said that he's not going for the MVP the last 2 seasons. He has done
not always.
No, yes, he has. He has said, I don't care, to Shams Charania of The Athletic last March and Chris Mannix of Sports Illustrated 2 years ago.
But you could read between the lines, though. You could read between the lines of him nitpicking Jokic after game. He did all this stuff that was so he clearly cared.
Why are you falling for it now?
Because I'm an idiot. But I do truly think the comments feel different. If you're seeing on a day they do feel genuinely different, I think.
I agree, maybe, but to me, it's like he's making a mockery of this entire thing. I think is part. No,
for sure.
Like
it was a terrible look.
If you watch the Spurs game, go back and watch the Spurs game where he scored 70, and look, there's been thousands of NBA players, and they'll never score 50, let alone 70 points. He battled in that game, he was fighting for rebounds and trucking now it was easy because it's Zach Collins, and Victor, literally he has 80 pounds on Victor. Those are the listed numbers. But he he was rabid. And I wrote a column that kind of gave him credit, because I was like, look, there are certain people that I think appreciate a guy that sees an advantage and wants to be that. You can call him a bully, or you can call him ruthless. Right. And we love that ruthlessness in our athletes. So it's just a matter of perspective. Joe, I don't know how to bet this thing. I just continue to look at it and just be like, I don't know, man. I think Shai's had the second best season and he's third best. And if Joel doesn't win, I think Shai's going to win it, and Shai's still a longer number. So I just continue to be like, you should just bet Shai. And that's all I got.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on betting Shai. I like Shai. I think that he's been awesome. I think that there's a pretty decent chance that Oklahoma City has the number 1 seed and, potentially could even have the number 1 record in the NBA. And I think if you look at it from that perspective, and if the voters really do get a chance to look at it and they say look, Shai's not missing games. He's all world on both sides of the ball, on offense and defense. You're seeing this team this team is going to be better than Embiid's, just flat out better, no matter how you cut it. So I think that, if it does get really close, and Embiid has 6 more back-to-backs coming up for the rest of the season, is he going to play through those? I don't know. So I think that given the fact that the market, has I think that if Embiid actually played every game for the rest of the season, probably should win MVP. I think that what he's been doing on the court has been so dominant. It's been really impressive, regardless of who he's playing. But I do think
I want to ask you that. I actually do want to ask you that, because I am genuinely open on this. It doesn't matter to you. He averages 39 points at home versus teams under 500. That's including the 70-point game.
Yeah.
He averages 30, I think 6 is what I had pulled the number at for when he faces teams under 500 on the road. He should score less versus the good teams. They're good.
Yeah.
They're better defensive teams. But my question for you is if it's very apparent that he targets playing in certain matchups, does that matter to you?
Not necessarily. I think it goes to the ruthlessness thing that you kind of said. I think that sitting in this particular game against Jokic, if this happened in April, forget it. It's over. He's not winning. It's happening in January. And I think that by the time it comes back around, I don't think that people are going to care. They're it's going to be people we're going to be yelling at the clouds and being we sat against Jokic in Denver again. People are going to be I don't care. That was in January, if he smashes, because that's the way that people think about a lot of things with awards. It's recency bias. So, I mean, if he plays enough games, I think that it's weird, but I feel like instituting the 65 game requirement gave a minimum. And it's if you hit the minimum, then you can win the award and you didn't miss too many games.
That's how I felt too. Or I've wondered instead, if Jokic plays 77 or Shea plays 77 and Joel plays 65, the voters are going to have an out to be look, they set the limit. He had to pass the limit. He played the limit. Even though it's there are going to be people that are but the other guy played 12 more games. That's valuable.
Yeah.
He played in all these matchups.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think you're right. With that, if it's really close, and I think it's close, right? I think it's close with Embiid and Shea and Jokic, but I think that,
it's interesting. I looked at the numbers today, and they're not as dominant as I thought they were. Embiid's literally having the best scoring season of all time. Just so we're clear on this, if we're just talking about per 100 possessions scoring, Embiid is literally going to have the best scoring season since Wilt.
It's ridiculous.
He's on pace for he's ahead of Harden right now for per 100 possessions since Jordan. And when you get to that level, it's just I don't know what else you want. The whole point of the game is score points.
He's scoring a point per minute, which is insane. The number's insane. And I think that's part of it.
A lot of my the reason I get amped up about this stuff is because I don't find the conversations that we hold for certain players to be equal. And that's a lot of it. And I do think that there is a part of me that is bothered by he's missed games versus the Celtics, the Wolves, the Heat, and the Nuggets on the road. Yeah. Those are 4 games that he was not available. Now, some of those he was just hurt. He gets hurt. I get that. It just doesn't look good when he is available, when he faces he's doesn't miss the games versus the Wizards with knee soreness. He's available for those. And that to me is tough, Jim, with trying to understand, how do I rationalize what the numbers look like when I know what his games played profile is?
Well, it's really funny because I am the Embiid big picture backer, but I actually am very much on the opposite side of this. I think it's a very fraudulent MVP case, and I'm very confused as to why he is leading it, to be honest. Because so if we go to estimated plus minus, he is leading in EPM right now. But if we go to estimated wins, which combines the games played aspect to this, which is what actually matters, he drops down to 4th place. And I do think it very much matters that those numbers, you said per 100 possessions. We've come along in our analysis so that we know adjustments. We don't just say he's averaging X amount of points per game because we know pace dictates a lot of that. We should absolutely weight the opponent. And he is 100% picking and choosing his opponents this season. And I absolutely think that should ding him. And this is where I come back to, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. There is no logic year to year. Again, I was the person who last year I was fine with voting for Embiid, which I know drew many eye rolls because Jokic, I didn't want to give him a 3rd straight because he hadn't won the postseason. hadn't won the finals, but now I can't use that same logic to give it to Embiid, even though he hasn't even reached the conference finals. So for me, logically, I'm like, there is no way on planet Earth Embiid can get it. If I use the logic I used last year, which I am bringing through, that is consistent for me, which is why I have felt like I'm taking crazy pills this whole time with Embiid being the favorite in the MVP, beating up these cream cake teams. Those numbers aren't real. They're real, but they're not adjusted.
I will say a lot of this for me is like, I think Shea has the new guy on the block interest. I think a lot of the stats nerds are going to go for him. I think he's going to have a lot of momentum. I don't know that there's enough, like they have to get the 1 seed for him to have the narrative. Yeah. And that might be really, like if Embiid's not eligible, because Shea is battling everyone knows Embiid. And like, I mean, I'm with you. Like I also, Embiid is a guy that is just defying all sorts of, the logic only applies in certain instances, which is why I've had a hard time with it. Or last year it was, well, you got to win in the postseason, but Joel's never done that. No.
That's the part that's like, what are we doing?
Jokic has to win in the postseason to win 3, but Embiid can win 1 if he hasn't. Okay, so like, all right, if Shea hasn't made the playoffs, can he win? You know, and it's like, well, no, like you need to have postseason success. Okay, so it's Joker, even though Joker's probably been, in my opinion, the 3rd best. Yeah, I'm fascinated to see what the next straw poll shows. We'll see how it goes. For right now, I would tell you the MVP market is extremely volatile still, and you can just wait and see if Embiid plays enough games, and then we'll figure it out from there. My thanks to Jim Turvey and Joe Delara. You can catch them on Twitter. Joe's at Joe Delara. Jim is at Turvey Bets in the Action Network app and on Twitter. Make sure to check out youtube.com/the Action Network. My thanks to David Payne, our producer, for getting this up, as well as Hutton Jackson, the video crew, for getting this up on youtube.com/the Action Network with lots of video content getting you set for the big game. Have yourselves a great night. I'm off tomorrow night. I'll see you again on Tuesday. Sean Little will be with you tomorrow night for Best Bets. We'll talk to you then. Till next time, let's get buckets.